My son got married on a Saturday in September, and I was there in my good dress, the navy one I bought at Kohl's 3 years ago and only worn twice. I'd been saving something for him for a long time. Not jewelry, not an envelope of cash. A savings passbook from First Fidelity Bank, the kind they don't even print anymore. Dark green cover, my name stamped along the spine, 31 years of deposits recorded in ink on thin paper. I'd wrapped it in brown craft paper and tied it with a piece of twine. Simple, the way I'd always kept things. His new wife's name was Sloan. She came from the kind of family that had a lake house in Michigan and a winter place in Scottsdale, and never thought much about either. Her mother, Diane, had a way of looking at people that started at their shoes and worked up slowly, like she was appraising furniture at an estate sale. The reception was at Hartwell Farm, a converted barn venue about 40 minutes outside Columbus. Exposed beams, Edison bulbs, caterers in black aprons. The kind of place that showed up in bridal magazines with captions like rustic elegance. I'd driven myself. My son had offered to send a car, and I'd told him I was fine. I found him near the bar during cocktail hour. He looked handsome in his suit. He looked like his father did at 32, before everything changed. I handed him the package and told him it was for me, that I'd been holding on to it for a while. He unwrapped it while Sloan watched. She tilted her head the way people do when they're already deciding something. A passbook? My son turned it over in his hands. Mom, this is really old. Diane appeared from somewhere behind Sloan's shoulder. She had a champagne flute in one hand and that look already in her eyes. "Oh my goodness," she said. "How charming. Is that from a savings account?" "It's for your future," I said. "Both of you." Sloan reached over and took it from my son's hands. She flipped it open, glanced at the first page, and handed it back to him like she was returning a menu at a restaurant that didn't have anything she wanted. "Babe." Her voice was low, but not low enough. "I thought your mom was bringing something for the house." "It's a gift," my son said, but his voice had already gone uncertain. He was watching Sloan's face the way he'd learned to watch it. "Of course it is," Diane said. Her smile didn't move. "Very thoughtful." Then Sloan laughed. Not loud, just a small, clean sound. "It's sweet, really," she said. We were expecting something a little more." She let the sentence trail off. She didn't need to finish it. My son was already looking at the floor. I stood there in my navy dress while the Edison bulbs glowed warm above us, and the caterers moved around with their trays, and 40 or 50 guests drifted through the barn, and I understood, very clearly, that I had just been dismissed. My son handed the passbook back to me. "Maybe hold on to it, Mom," he said. "We can figure something out later." I took it. I put it in my purse. I said, "Of course," and smiled. I drove home in the dark with the windows down because I needed the air. That night I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I'm 63 years old. I've worked as a hospital housekeeper for 26 years. Same building, different floors, depending on the shift. I know the smell of every ward. I know which nurses leave their coffee cups in the break room and which ones actually wash them. I know the overnight security guard's daughter just got into nursing school, and I know that the chief of surgery on the 4th floor keeps a photo of his dog in his breast pocket and looks at it when he thinks no one's watching. I know things about that building that no administrator ever will, because I'm invisible there the way working people are always invisible. I started my first savings account in 1993, the year my husband, Kerrigan, left. My son was 4. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dayton on my salary alone, and I sat down one night with a legal pad and a calculator, and I did the math on what would happen if I saved $200 a month every month without fail. I saved $200 a month every month without fail. Then I saved more. In 1998, I bought a duplex on Fairview Street for $38,000. Everyone said it was a bad neighborhood. Everyone was wrong. Or rather, everyone was only seeing what it was and not what it was going to be. I fixed it myself, watched library videos on plumbing, called my Uncle Gerald on the phone while I was elbow deep in a crawl space, rented both units to a young nurse and a family of 4, used the rent to pay my mortgage and started saving again. 1 property became 2, 2 became 6, 6 became many more. I never told my son about any of it. I told myself it was because I wanted him to build his own life without the shadow of money distorting everything. I told myself that if he didn't know I had wealth, he'd learn to value work, value me for the right reasons. Sitting at that kitchen table, looking at the passbook in my hands, I understood I'd been wrong about something. He hadn't learned to value work. He'd learned to be embarrassed by it. The passbook had $11.2 million in it. He'd handed it back to me because his wife had left. First Fidelity Bank opened at 8:30. I was there at 8. The teller who helped me was a young man named Patrick who had the slightly terrified look of someone who'd been on the job for about 90 days. He typed in the account number, stopped, typed it again, leaned closer to the screen. He excused himself without finishing his sentence. The branch manager came out within 2 minutes. Her name was Carol Novak, 50, silver-haired, the kind of calm that comes from having seen a lot. She shook my hand and asked if I'd like to step into a private room. We sat across from each other at a table that smelled like lemon polish. "Mrs. Oakes," she said, "this account has been active since 1993. You've never made a withdrawal." "That's right." She looked at the number on her screen for a moment. The current balance, including compounded interest and dividends, is $11,240,000. I'd known the number. I'd been watching it for years, but hearing it spoken in a quiet room by a careful woman made it land differently. "I'd like to close it," I said. "Cashier's checks, made out to myself. I'll need them by noon." She didn't argue. She did ask, very gently, if everything was all right. I told her everything was fine, thank you, and that I'd also like a referral to someone who handled private investigations discreetly. She wrote a name on a card without blinking. "Maureen Slade," she said, "former financial crimes investigator. She's handled sensitive matters for several of our clients." Maureen Slade had an office above a dry cleaner on Broad Street. She was in her mid-50s, short gray hair, sensible shoes, a handshake like she'd been waiting for you. She charged $800 a day and was worth every cent. I told her about my son, about Sloan, about the wedding. Then I told her what I actually needed to know. "Your son-in-law," she said. "What's his business?" Sloan's father, Warren, ran a commercial real estate development firm. Decent-sized. Operated in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. My son had been brought on as a project manager 2 years ago, right around the time he and Sloan got serious. The timeline had always bothered me in the back of my mind, but I hadn't let myself look at it directly. Maureen looked at it directly. She came back to me 7 days later with a folder that she laid on the table between us with the careful manner of someone setting down something fragile. Warren Calloway had a second set of books, not the dramatic kind you see in movies, quieter than that. A series of shell companies incorporated in Delaware, 3 of them all created within 6 months of each other, all funneling contract overruns into accounts that never appeared in the firm's official filings. Not millions, not yet, but the structure was there. Waiting, the kind of thing someone sets up slowly so it looks like nothing until it's very much something. My son's name was on 2 of the company registrations. "He may not understand what he signed," Maureen said. She said it the way honest people say things they aren't fully sure of. "Or he does," I said. "Or he does." I asked her how long before someone outside our conversation would see this. "Hard to say," she told me. "If the Ohio AG's office is already looking and there are rumors, could be 6 months. Could be less." I thanked her and took the folder home. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on top of the covers in my apartment, and I thought about my son at 4 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor with a cardboard box of canned goods, making a fort. I thought about driving him to school in a car with a broken heater, both of us in our coats. I thought about the day he graduated college and how he'd hugged me in the parking lot, really hugged me, before Sloan's family surrounded him and the camera came out. I thought about the passbook. I thought about the look on his face when he handed it back to me. In the morning, I made coffee and I called the Ohio Attorney General's public tip line. I kept working. Night shift, 5 days a week. 4th floor oncology, then third floor general medicine, then down to the lobby and back up. I knew my route the way you know a route when you've walked it 10,000 times, not by thinking, just by moving. My son called 8 times in the 2 weeks after the wedding. I let most of them go to voicemail. The ones I listened to told a story in stages. The first few were apologetic, cautious. Mom, I know the wedding was awkward. I'm sorry about the passbook thing. Call me back. By the middle of the second week, the tone had shifted. Something's happening at the firm. Warren's been weird. Sloan is upset. I could really use your advice, Mom. By the end of the second week, Mom, I got a letter from a law firm in Columbus. I don't know what's happening. Please call me. I listened to that last one standing in the basement break room at 2 in the morning, holding a cup of tea I'd made from the hot water spout that had never quite worked right. A thin stream of sound from the phone pressed against my ear, my son's voice high and tight in a way I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. I thought about calling him back right then. I didn't. There was something I needed him to see for himself, and he wasn't ready to see it yet. On a Tuesday morning, I drove out to Hartwell Farm. The venue was closed on weekdays except for tours and vendor meetings. I parked in the gravel lot and walked through the split rail fence to the main entrance, where a young woman with a clipboard met me. Mrs. Oakes? She shook my hand. I'm the venue coordinator. You said you wanted to discuss a business matter? I'd like to see the ownership records, I said, for this property. She blinked. I'm sorry? I handed her a document from my folder. A deed, notarized, dated 4 years prior. The property at 4410 Hartwell Road had been listed for sale in 2021 when the family that owned it ran into financial trouble. Beautiful land, renovated barn, good bones, losing money every year because they didn't understand event management. I bought it through my LLC, ORM Properties, my initials, for $1.4 million cash. Hired an outside manager to run the bookings. Kept my name off the website. My son had chosen this venue because Sloan liked it, because it photographed well, because it looked expensive. He'd gotten married in his mother's barn. The venue coordinator stared at the deed for a long time. I didn't know, she said, very quietly. That's fine, I said. I'd like to discuss converting the property. I want to repurpose the land. I called my son the next morning. He answered on the first ring. Mom? He sounded terrible. Not sleep-deprived terrible, hollowed out terrible. Where have you been? Working. I need to talk to you. Something is... The law firm that contacted me, they said I'm named in a filing. I don't understand what it means. Warren says it's nothing, that it's a standard audit, but Sloan has been son. I said, I need you to come see me. Now? Saturday. Come to the farm. Hartwell Farm? Yes. A pause. Why there? Because that's where I'd like to have this conversation. He was quiet for a moment. Warren and Sloan want to come. That's fine, I said. 2 o'clock. Saturday morning, I was at the farm by 9. I'd given notice to the venue coordinator the previous week. Bookings through the end of the current season would be honored. After that, the property would be closed for renovation. I'd already met with an architect, a woman named Portia Gaines, who specialized in adaptive reuse. The plan was 38 units of workforce housing on the north end of the acreage, with the barn itself converted to a community center. Teachers, nurses, hospital workers, people whose salaries didn't match what the housing market asked of them. I was standing near the fence when the cars arrived. My son came first, in Sloan's car, Sloan driving. Warren's black SUV pulled in 30 seconds later. My son got out and walked toward me quickly, like he was afraid of what he was going to find. He looked thinner than he had at the wedding. He looked like someone carrying weight in the wrong part of his body. Mom. He stopped a few feet away. What is this? This is where you got married, I said. I know, but why are we... Sloan came up beside him. She was in slacks and a jacket, dressed for something important. She looked at me the way she had at the wedding, that starting at the shoes look. Mrs. Oakes. Her voice was even. I appreciate you reaching out, but I think there's been a misunderstanding about the situation at the firm. My father's attorney. This is my property, I said. She stopped. I'm sorry? Hartwell Farm. I've owned it for 4 years. You got married in a barn I own. The silence that followed was the particular kind that happens when something reorganizes itself in someone's mind. Warren had come up behind his daughter. He was a large man, Warren, the kind who stood slightly forward as if he was always about to say something important. He was not saying anything now. "You own this," my son said slowly. I own this property and 42 others," I said. "I have for a long time." My son's face went through several things in quick succession. I watched all of them. "The passbook," he said. "That was one account. Emergency savings. 11 million and some change. I planned to give it to you when you were ready." Sloan made a sound that wasn't quite a word, but my son stopped himself. "A housekeeper," I said. "Yes, I still am. I go in Sunday nights through Thursday. I know every floor of that hospital." "Why didn't you tell me? I've been waiting for that question. I've been turning it over for weeks." "Because I made a mistake," I said. "I thought not telling you would teach you that my work had dignity on its own, that I was worth something regardless of what I owned. I was wrong. I should have told you. I should have talked to you about all of it years ago, and I didn't, and that's on me." My son's jaw tightened. His eyes were bright. "But I also need you to understand," I said, "that when you handed that passbook back to me because your wife laughed at it, that showed me something too. And I need you to sit with that." Warren took a step forward. "Mrs. Oakes, whatever you may think you know about our firm's finances." "I know quite a bit," I said. Another car had turned into the gravel lot. It parked neatly next to Sloan's car. A woman got out, mid-40s, dark blazer, badge visible on her belt. Sloan turned. Her face changed. "Who is that?" "Her name is Special Agent Donna Ferreira," I said. "She's with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit." Warren's face went the color of old concrete. My son didn't run. That was the first thing I noticed. He stood where he was and watched Agent Ferreira cross the gravel, and he didn't move toward her, and he didn't move away. I think, somewhere in the last 2 weeks, some part of him had already known this was coming. Agent Ferreira introduced herself. She had the same professional calm I'd heard in her voice on the phone, the kind that isn't cold, just controlled. She told Warren she had documentation of wire transfers from Callaway Development into 3 Delaware shell companies over a period of 14 months. She told him she had falsified project cost reports. She told him she had testimony from 2 former employees. Then she looked at my son. "Mr. Oakes," she said, "your name appears on the incorporation documents for 2 of the 3 companies. However, the financial activity associated with your name shows no direct benefit to you, no transfers in, no personal accounts connected. I need to ask you some questions." My son looked at me. "I had nothing to do with this," he said. "Not to Agent Ferreira. To me." "Mom, I swear I didn't know what I was signing. Warren told me it was standard vendor registration." I held his gaze. I believed him. I believed him before he said it, which was why I'd spent 2 weeks documenting his non-involvement before I ever made a call. "I know," I said. Something in his face broke open a little. Warren was talking now, rapidly, professionally, the voice of a man who'd had a lawyer on retainer his whole adult life. Agent Ferreira listened with the patience of someone who'd heard this exact speech before. Sloan had not said a word since the moment the badge appeared. She stood slightly apart from her father, looking at nothing in particular, and I watched her understand, very slowly, that the floor she'd been standing on had been her father's construction all along. They arrested Warren there in the gravel lot, with the September light coming through the old oaks and the barn standing quietly behind us. Sloan got in her car. She didn't look at my son when she left. I think she knew, without anyone saying it, that a different conversation was waiting for her about what she'd known and when. My son stood in the parking lot after both cars had gone. Just the 2 of us and Agent Ferreira's car disappearing down the long drive. He turned to me. "The passbook," he said again, like he was still working it out. $11 million. And you handed it to me in craft paper and twine. "That's what I had," I said. "I gave it back to you." "You did." He sat down on the fence rail, which probably wasn't designed for sitting, and put his face in his hands. He sat like that for a while. I didn't say anything. Some things need space more than they need words. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Why didn't you just tell Sloan to go to hell? You own the barn. You could have just. Because that's not what I wanted, I said. I didn't want to win an argument. I wanted you to see clearly. See what? That her family's money was built on theft? That she chose you partly because she thought I had nothing, which meant you had nothing, which meant you'd be grateful to marry into something, and that you let her make you ashamed of me. He flinched. I'm not. You handed the passbook back. He didn't argue. The fence rail creaked under him. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you, I said. I'm converting this property into workforce housing. 38 units. There's going to be a lot of work involved, and the manager I've hired is good, but she needs help coordinating the tenant applications and the community programming. He looked up at me. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance to build something that matters. Whether you take it is your decision. A long silence. The oaks moved. Somewhere in the distance, a tractor started up. What about the passbook? He said. The money? It's in trust. It'll be there when you've earned the right to use it well. I paused. I'm not saying that to punish you. I'm saying that because I watched what happened when someone assumed it was theirs already. He was quiet for another minute. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. About the wedding? About handing it back. About all of it. I know you are. Is that enough? I thought about that honestly. It's a beginning, I said. He showed up Monday morning with work boots and a notepad. He didn't ask for a salary. I didn't offer one, not yet. He sat at the folding table in the converted tack room that served as a site office and went through tenant application files with the same focus he brought to the firm, except now there was no one standing over him telling him what to look for. The first family he approved was a couple, a hospital janitor named Roy and his wife, who worked as a school cafeteria supervisor. 2 kids. They'd been on a wait list for affordable housing for 3 years. My son called them personally to confirm their unit. He came to tell me after. He cried, my son said. Roy. He cried. I looked at him. That's what the work is, I said. That's why I kept doing it. He nodded slowly. Not like he was agreeing, like he was filing it somewhere real. The grand opening was in April. My son stood at the door of Unit 14 handing out keys. He'd been there since 7 that morning, walking the property with the site supervisor, checking the punch list items, talking to the families as they arrived. I stayed near the back of the crowd. Sandra, who taught 2nd grade and had been living with her sister for a year and a half, stopped in front of me on her way to her apartment. Are you the one who built this? She asked. My son and I said. She shook my hand for a long time. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Later, after the mayor had spoken and the caterers had packed up and the last family had gotten their key, my son found me by the old fence line, where the original barn used to stand. He didn't say anything right away. We stood there looking at the 3-story buildings, lights coming on in windows as families settled in. I keep thinking about that night, he said finally. The wedding. The way I handed it back? Stop thinking about it, I said. Think about this instead. He looked at the lit windows. How do you forgive someone? He asked. Me. How do you forgive me? I put my hands in my pockets. The April air was cool and smelled like cut grass. I already did, I said, but forgiveness isn't the hard part. The hard part is deciding who you want to be after. He was quiet. I think I know now, he said. Then show me, I said. Keep showing me. His phone rang. He looked at it, looked at me. It's the attorney, he said, about the divorce filing. Go, I said. Handle it. He walked away across the grass, phone to his ear, work boots leaving prints in the soft April ground. I stood there a while longer, watching the windows. 30 years of hospital shifts, 30 years of early mornings and long nights and walking floors that no one else noticed. I'd never done it for recognition. I'd done it because work is how you build things, and building things is how you stay standing when everything else shifts. My son was starting to understand that. The passbook was still in my safe at home. I'd framed nothing, kept nothing on the wall. But the passbook was there in its plastic sleeve, dried and faintly stained from my own hands after all these years. It wasn't a symbol of what my daughter-in-law had rejected. It wasn't a trophy. It was a record, 31 years of deposits, never withdrawal, adding up quietly in the dark the way honest work always does, unseen by most people and more valuable than any of them knew. If you've ever felt invisible because of the work you do, if someone's ever looked through you in a room or laughed at what you brought to the table, I want you to know something. The value was always there. It just hadn't revealed itself yet. Keep your passbook. Keep showing up. The teller will go pale eventually. And to whoever needs to hear it today, what you do with your hands has dignity. Don't let anyone take that from you. Subscribe if this story meant something to you. Leave a comment. I read every one. And if you know someone who's been made to feel small because of their work, share this with them. God sees what the world overlooks. He always has. I've thought a lot about the moment my son handed that passbook back to me. Not with anger, not with cruelty even, just with that quiet, uncomfortable look of someone choosing the easier path. That look told me more than anything Sloane or her father Warren ever said out loud. Here's what I've come to understand. People don't reveal themselves in big dramatic moments as often as we think. They reveal themselves in small ones, in a glance, in a half-second decision, in whether they reach out a hand or pull it back. My son pulled his back that September evening, and I think he knew it the moment he did it. Some part of him knew, but here's the other side of that, and this is the part I had to sit with for a long time. I wasn't innocent in how we got there. I kept 31 years of my life in a safe under a floorboard and told myself it was wisdom. I called it a lesson I was teaching him, and maybe there was truth in that. But there was also pride in it, the pride of someone who wanted to be seen clearly without having to risk saying, "Look at me clearly." I chose silence because silence felt safer than vulnerability, and silence, over time, created a distance my son filled with other people's values. That's cause and effect. Not punishment, not fate, just the plain math of what we put in and what grows from it. What I know about character is that it doesn't announce itself. Sloane's father Warren built a career on appearances, beautiful developments, impressive numbers, a name that opened doors. What he'd actually built, underneath all of it, was a structure designed to take from people who trusted him. And it held until it didn't. These things always hold until they don't. The effort required to maintain a false thing eventually outweighs the effort it would have taken to build a true one. That's not a moral judgment. That's just how weight works. My son had to watch that collapse from the inside. He had to stand in a gravel parking lot and understand that the family he'd married into was not what he believed, and that some part of him had chosen not to look too hard because looking hard was uncomfortable. That takes courage to admit. Real intelligence isn't knowing a lot of facts. It's being willing to revise what you thought you knew when the evidence changes. I watched my son do that. It wasn't clean or quick, but he did it. And then he showed up Monday morning with work boots. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not the arrest, not the revelation, not any of the dramatic moments. Monday morning, work boots, a notepad, no salary, no guarantee, just the decision to show up and be useful. That's where character actually lives. Not in the grand gesture, but in what a person does when no one is watching and there's nothing immediate to gain. I'm 63 years old. I've mopped floors in a hospital for 26 years. I have $11 million in a passbook and 42 properties, and I still go in Sunday nights because the work means something to me that the money never could. Not because I'm performing humility. Because I genuinely believe that what you do with your hands and your time, day after day, is who you are. And I want to be someone who shows up. My son is learning that. Slowly, imperfectly, the way anyone learns anything real. The passbook is still in the safe. It's not a symbol anymore. It's just savings, waiting for the person he's becoming to be ready for it. I think he will be. I think we both will.